Hello folks, this is Sula speaking. You're listening to another video for Teamfight Tactics. This is about the end of set 11, and we're going to do our traditional thing where we look back, we do a retrospective on the set, we talk about what's good, we talk about what's bad, and about some of the things that really characterized this set over the, 4 months that it was around. The background footage is going to be from a double-up game that I did together with Antisocial Monkey, so I'll make some references to that from time to time, but by and large, we're going to be focusing just on our retrospective. In past years, I've done a written version of this, but I don't think that I'm going to do that this year. I think I've done enough of the written versions. They actually take up quite a bit of time, so you'll just have to rely on the recorded version for this particular year. Now, set 11, I think, was not an especially good set. If you've watched any of the videos over the course of the last few months, you're probably aware of the fact that I've been bad-mouthing this set quite a lot, and have definitely played far, far fewer games in this set than in some of the previous sets because, as I said, I just don't think that this was that great of a set. So we'll talk about some of the reasons why that was, some of the things that should have been better, and I think we're going to hope that set 12 turns out to be a little bit better. Okay, let's get underway, and I want to start by talking about the things that I thought were actually good in this set, because, it's never all good or all bad. There's always some of both elements in here, and this set did do some things reasonably well. Okay, so the first thing that I would say that I think was good about this set is I do think it had a very consistent theme, and that has not always been the case with some of the sets. I'm thinking in particular of some of the sets like the game set number set number 5 that had like the good versus evil theme. Like, I don't think that really was much of a theme at all, and like it was really easy to miss that. But this was a set that wasn't like that. It did have a consistent theme for it, which was that you were really dealing with like this traditional East Asian calligraphy theme. I think the official title was Inkborn Fables for this set, and that definitely did come across. I mean, you can just look at the artwork on the screen right now. Between we have like the Cho'Gath portrait art down there at the bottom, as I am of course getting units for Antisocial Monkey to play Cho'Gath, to play Cog Cho reroll, which is his favorite board. But you can just see kind of like from the artwork down there that it's all kind of like flowing lines and, as I said, traditional like calligraphy stuff. Is very pretty in terms of the artwork. And I do think that the extra stages that they came up with for this set looked pretty nice as well. So for example, I deliberately picked for this game one of the stages that you got if you played all the way through the pass, or I guess the first pass, because there's technically 2 battle passes now, which is completely ridiculous. But the first of the 2 battle passes, it gives you, if you completely finished it, you had this stage, which is like, this nice flowing, looks like you're on like a terraced rice field or something like that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I do think it's quite pretty, and I like the other stage that they had for that pass as well, which I'm not using in this game. So I do think that that it had a very consistent theme, and as usual, the art department in TFT and in League of Legends more generally always does a really nice job, so kudos for that. Now, the downside to that was because everything was using like kind of like this traditional, as we said, calligraphy, kind of like East Asian inspired theme work. The downside to that is it was pretty difficult to tell the units apart. Like, it was hard to distinguish the units. One of the criticisms I made in past sets, in particular I'm thinking of set 3, my big criticism was every unit looks the same. Set 3 was the space-based one. Every single unit looked like it was either futuristic person with a sword or futuristic person with a gun. Like, that was every single board in set 3. And set 8, the superhero monsters attack one, was kind of like that too. Everything was like some futuristic comic books inspired nonsense. This set was kind of like that too. It was hard to tell the units apart. In particular, some of the traits really did look similar. I know that they try to color code the units to make them relatively similar. By the way, here I'm going to get 4 free rerolls that last until used. I'm going to hold on to these for a long time because I want to be rerolling on level 7 in this game. So I'm going to hold on to these for a while. But like I said, the artwork, it was a consistent style, but the downside was it was really, really hard to distinguish the units from one another, like really hard. And I did not find it to be very easy at all to tell one from the other. So it definitely made it harder to learn the set in that regard. So that's the trade-off. And I've made this point many times. I really liked it in set 9 where they just used the base art for all the units. I really hope that they do that more often because it's just very difficult to tell them apart in a set like this. But enough of that point. Okay, other stuff that I think that they did well. I like the fact that they included the Exalted trait in this set. Now, I'm not going to be playing Exalted trait in this game, although the previous game I put up on YouTube, or at least one of the recent ones, I can't remember if it was the most recent one, but one of the recent ones I did, I went to level 10 and I played pretty heavily through the Exalted trait. What this did was it meant that you would get a different set of units every game that had the Exalted trait. I believe there were 60 different combinations, and it would just pick one of those randomly. So there was like this incredibly high number of combinations. And if you played 3 of those units, then you would gain 1 additional XP every round at the end of each round. And in addition to that, you would also get a damage bonus for the team-wide. It was, they changed the numbers around, but eventually they settled on it was 7% plus your level. So like I'm level 4 right now. If I had Exalted trait in, it would be 7 plus 4, 11% bonus damage. So there was a real incentive to play this on some boards. You clearly couldn't play it every game unless you were like contorting yourselves into knots. But like sometimes the team comp you were playing would have the option to slot in Exalted. And like it did create some incentive to, I'm actually highlighting it right there, but there's just nothing that's going to fit with the board I'm playing right now for Exalted in this game. So it did give you some incentive to play different combinations from game to game. It's one of the things that I always feel like TFT is at its best when people are playing flexibly, when they're pivoting between different team comps. TFT is always at its worst when people are just doing rote memorization of particular team comps and then just forcing them in every single game. So like I said, that was something that I do think was really nice. Now the downside was it was kind of difficult to do that because, as I said, Exalted trait changed in every single game. So it was kind of like a very high skill cap thing, and I suspect that like the vast majority of players didn't really pay any attention to Exalted at all, and really only probably like the top 10 to 20% of the ladder and made any real attempt to play Exalted trait. But still, it was nice that it was there. It was maybe a little bit too complicated of a feature for the set, but it was still nice that it was there, and I have to give them credit for doing something new that was also really creative and helped to create different flexibility from game to game. So kudos for that. I do think that Exalted was a neat idea, even if it was probably a little too tricky to implement for most people. Anyway, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then the last thing I'm going to mention here, and you might be like, uh-oh, we're already getting to the end of the good stuff. Well, that's just the way how it works. It's my video. I could do this the way I want. The last thing I wanted to cover here is I did actually think that there were some improvements made as far as the overall kind of loot system that they use, the overall like treasure mode loot system. What I mean by that is they actually had some really nice rewards for the players for the 5th year anniversary. So that's actually something that I played in a number of these games. They added for the 5th year anniversary of TFT. The developers added the extra game mode, which was Pengu's Party mode. I did a number of videos on that. It did get tiresome relatively quickly because there was just too much econ in the game mode, but it was still kind of fun. The basic idea was you were just playing TFT set 11, but you would have the chance to bring back some traits from previous sets. Like I did a game where I got to play, like I said, I did one where I did Jazz trait. I did some where I had the Trainer trait and Namzi came back. I even had Phantom trait from set 1 coming back, which is kind of silly to have Phantom trait back because it was one of the worst designed traits in TFT history. But still, it was a neat mode to have. It definitely added a little bit of extra playability because this set got tiresome pretty fast, and having this additional game mode to play was quite nice because, as I said, the set was getting pretty stale pretty quickly. So it was nice to have this, and it did extend the life of the set for just a little while. It extended the life of the set, so that was a nice thing to have. I got some additional content out of it. I did some more games. Even if it was only a temporary feature, it like gave an extra week or two, so that was nice to have. And then I also do want to give credit for the revamped treasure system that they have. Now, there's some silly things about this. Basically, this mode, they revamped the whole treasure token system where instead of getting like a guaranteed reward after, I don't know, I think it was like 60 pulls from the treasure system, you get like a guaranteed reward. They did change that up so that now after every 10 pulls from the treasure system, you're guaranteed to get like these special loot medallions, or it's like after every 10 or every 20, you get some of these. And I think that they have like multiple different versions of this. And there's also a rotating shop now that has different stuff available in the shop. So the big downside to this is the system's way too complicated. You actually have 2 more currencies. It's like the way that you actually buy stuff is you take real world currency like dollars or euros, and then you convert it into riot points, and then you have to buy the battle pass. and then you use the battle pass to get treasure tokens, and then you roll treasure tokens to get like mythic medallions, and then mythic medallions buy stuff. This is like the most dumb, ridiculous, convoluted system. Again, the whole point is to obscure how much money you're really spending in like the most scummy loot box system imaginable. So all of that is really distasteful. But if you're someone like me who is not spending absurd amounts of money on buying cosmetics, this really is a better system, because you can get the tokens that come out of the treasure boxes or whatever they are, and you can actually just save them to buy things that you actually want. So like if you're looking right now, I was able to I actually got quite a few of these because for whatever reason I was pretty lucky when I was spending my treasure tokens and got like I got like the 1,000 token reward twice, which is supposed to be a 1% result, but I got it twice, so I don't know if the odds were screwy or something. But anyway, I got like a whole bunch of these, and so I was able to spend them in the store, and I was actually able to get the I don't know what the name of this is, but it's like the Feather Knight that has the little dragon skin. I think they had this from back in the set where they had dragons, set 7, or maybe it was set 8, but it was somewhere like that. But anyway, I actually just had enough that I could just purchase this, so I didn't have to like roll for random loot box nonsense. I could just buy what I wanted. And I know that the one Feather Knight that I have been missing for years, which is the True Ice Feather Knight, sooner or later it's going to be in the shop. So I'm just going to wait until it's there, and then I'll be able to purchase it. And it's not even going to cost money, because I can just use the tokens I already have from the whole loot box thing. So even though this is like a ridiculously convoluted system, it actually is an improvement, because before this, all you could do is open loot boxes, which was the dumbest thing imaginable. Now, you don't have to just rely on loot boxes. You can actually wait for stuff that you want to appear in the store, and then you can just buy the stuff you want. Now, why they don't just have everything in the store and you can just pay X dollars to get it, you would think they would just literally put the stuff in the store and you could pay X dollars, but people figured out a long time ago that if it's all loot box nonsense, that they can extract more money from people. So if we're going to have loot box idiocy, then at least this is an improvement over what we could have had before. So kudos to them. It was stupid that the only way to get things was to pull them from loot boxes. Now you can actually find stuff in the rotating store and get what you want. All right. So we got a couple different options here in this augment. I actually ended up taking Spirit Guardians, which is because I'm playing Warden Frontline. I do wonder in retrospect if I should have taken the Arcanist emblem and then played 4 Arcanists, because I would end up on 3 Arcanists for this game, and having the Arcanist emblem might have been better because I only played 2 Warden Frontline, but that's not really the purpose of this video, which, as I said, is we're trying to go back and analyze the set. So having covered the things that I think were good in this set, now let's go ahead and try to cover some of the things that maybe weren't so good in this set. And we'll start with the big featured mechanic of the set, which is encounters. So I view encounters as a heavily failed mechanic. I think this is one of the worst mechanics that they ever came up with. So as a quick refresher, what are the encounters? Well, basically they're just stuff that happens throughout the game. They pop up periodically throughout the game and do all sorts of random things. I think that there are about 80 different encounters in total, and you would randomly get some of them at the start of the game. We actually have an encounter coming up on the next round. Now, there are some encounters that weren't terrible. Like, there are some that, so like we actually had one earlier that was everybody gets 4 free rerolls, and you can use them whenever you want. That's actually not a bad encounter, because it actually lets you, plan on, you can kind of plan around whether you want to use them right away or save them up later on. And then we also get this one. You can either get an item remover with infinite uses or gold. You can take the magnetic remover with infinite uses or just get 5 gold. And like, I prefer the magnetic remover because I like the flexibility of moving items around without having to sell the units. But like, Antisocial Monkey took the 5 gold. He said he doesn't care. He just wants the 5 gold. And that is partly because he's playing a reroll board where there's less flexibility between units. You kind of already know what you're playing. But, like, those are kind of good encounters. And if they had all been like that, I don't think I would have minded the encounters that much. I think they would have been okay. But way, way, way too many of the encounters were just stupid idiocy, random nonsense that could break the game in all sorts of bad ways, in all sorts of ways that were not fun, and just introduced way too much randomness into the game. So, you having things like the encounter where everybody gets 6 radiant items for 1 round. I think I had that in the game that we did before this. Like, when someone's on a win streak or a loss streak, like, if you're trying to win streak and then just suddenly everyone gets 6 radiant items, it's just a complete crapshoot who's going to win the next round because of those radiant items. Like, you have no control over what's going to happen because they inject so much randomness into it. And like, if you're trying to base your economy on maintaining a win streak, that can just screw you over in the worst way possible for something that you had no control over whatsoever. We also had games where, like, there was a game where I played the Kog'Maw reroll, which was what ASM is playing right now, and everybody got, like, we get to a carousel where there's a radiant item on the carousel for everybody, and I had already fully itemized Kog'Maw, who's the main carry, and I already fully itemized Cho'Gath, who's the main tank. So, like, everybody gets a radiant item, but I can't put them on my main carry or my main tank because I fully itemized my units. Like, that just screwed me over in the worst way possible, and, like, there was no way to know that was coming. It's just complete dumb luck, and I just get hosed for no reason whatsoever. Or I've had games where I was re-rolling, and, like, I was playing a reroll comp that was based on, I think it was like 2-cost reroll. I think I was rerolling for like Senna or something. And like, I reroll and I like spend all this gold rerolling, and then we hit the beginning of stage 4. I'm finally done rerolling. It's time for me to push levels. And then we get an encounter that causes rerolls to cost 1 gold for like the next 4 rounds or something. Just as everyone else who's pushed to level 8 and level 9 is about to reroll, suddenly all their rerolls cost 1 gold after I've spent all my econ rerolling for 2 gold over like the last whole stage. Again, and then I just lose the game for no reason because now they can hit all their units super cheap. Again, stuff like this is not fun. It's just stupid. You just win or lose the game for factors that have nothing to do with you whatsoever. I would not mind this as much if at the start of the game you would get a list. Here's all the encounters that are going to happen, and here's the stage you're going to pop up on. They easily could have done that. There's that button in the top left corner that keeps track of the encounters. But you never know what's going to be an encounter until after it happens. There's never warning ahead of time. You can never plan for an encounter. All you can ever do is react to what happens afterwards. That's all you can ever do is react after the fact. What this means is encounters are just another form of augments. But they're an augment where you get no control over what happens. It just happens to you. So they're just a much worse version of augments. Like I said, where you don't know what's happening ahead of time, you can't control the outcome, and you can just get randomly screwed over for no reason whatsoever. By the way, this team over there already has a Hui, and they're already painting copies of units. That's not great for us. That team's going to be pretty strong. I actually thought I was going to lose that round, but I ended up winning it. So encounters get a massive thumbs down for me, and this was the big set mechanic. It was not a good sign. Like, even when we were still on the PBE, the public beta environment, before the set released, before the set even released, I was already like, yeah, I just don't want to see encounters. I was enjoying the games where there were little or no encounters more than when there were a lot of encounters. Excuse me. And that is not a bad sign when, like, the set hasn't even released yet and I don't even want to see the encounters. So, as I said, a bad mechanic, a really poor one to base the entire set around. And just ultimately not something that was interesting enough. I feel like this was, hey, we got to do another set. Like, we put all this time and effort into set 10, which was, again, the music-based set. They clearly put a tremendous amount of time and effort into that one. Then it was like, oh, yeah, well, we got to do another set as soon as that's over. Let's just do this random thing with encounters. I really feel like that was more or less what happened. It's like, yeah, we just need something for a placeholder set. Let's just do encounters. You know, it'll just buy time for a couple months until we can do the next set. Because we all know that one of the upcoming sets is going to be based around Arcane Season 2, the Netflix series. And that's probably going to be their next big set. Whether that's set 12 or set 13 is unclear at this point. Probably will be set 13, but that's the next one they're building towards. And this one, as you said, was pretty clearly an afterthought. So anyway, the encounters are bad because they're just too random, and they can be really unfair to players. No warning, they can randomly screw you over for no reason whatsoever. The other reason why encounters were bad, though, is they resulted in way too much econ, and that was a consistent problem for this set as well. Way too much gold and items and artifacts and support items, etc. Fill in the blank. Way too much of everything in this set. Too much loot, causing a huge problem in this set. And encounters were the first reason for that, is because most of the encounters just gave out more free stuff. Like in this game, you can already see we had kind of like a mini version of that in this game, with everybody getting the potential for a 5 gold or a golden item remover. By the way, a golden item remover is the equivalent of a silver augment. So, like, that's not nothing to give everybody a gold augment. Oh, by the way, I also get a huge high roll here and hit the 1% Lysandra. So, totally going to play that right now. And now I do kind of wish that I had taken the +1 Arcanist, because I'm going to drop the Zoe pretty soon here on this board. I also have a 2-star Lux, and ASM has a 2-star Lux. So, he's going to send that for 3-star Lux. And I'm going to try to ride that out up to level 8 and level 9. Anyway, though, so as I said, big problem. Too much econ, way too much gold in this. So many of the encounters just gave out additional loot, whether that was the encounters that gave everybody an additional component on the carousels. If it was the stupid Mario Party one where everybody catches fish for Tom Kench and you get like 10 gold afterwards, or there's another one where you just dance and everybody gets gold afterwards. But like all of these encounters added more gold to the game, and it's important to think about just how much econ has been added to the game over time. So going back to the earlier sets, if you look back at what's changed since, like, I don't know, set 4 or like set 3 or something, it's really kind of remarkable just how much additional econ has gone into the set. So there was the addition of augments, right? And a lot of the augments provide additional econ, right? Whether it's just direct or whether it's some kind of, item or additional benefit, you have augments. They give additional loot. Starting with set 9, we had portals. They give additional loot. And then now we have the encounters as well, which also give additional loot. So once all of these kind of stacked up together, it really started to get to the point where the amount of money in the game just really started to get out of control in this set. And you can see that because the 3-star 4 costs started to get completely out of control. People were hitting so many 3-star 4 costs. You were seeing them in almost every game at one point in time because there was just so much loot. It was very easy for people to get up to level 8 and then slow roll for the units. And, you have things like, there's an encounter that gives everybody a duplicator. There's an encounter where every single unit on the carousel is a 2-star 4 cost. Plus you have units like Hui who can paint additional units. So again, you had all these factors contributing to just give out insane amounts of loot and cause it to be way too easier to hit these units. By the way, I get a Wukong here at 1% odds too, so I'm definitely hitting some key units in this match. That's pretty nice. So I don't think I can get them on the board until I level up again. Anyway, so like I said, another huge problem with encounters, too much econ in this game. And the reason why having lots of, you might be like, oh, you just don't like having high econ games. Well, they're fine to get from time to time, but when every game is a high econ game, it really does warp the gameplay and it distorts it in unhealthy ways in TFT. I mean, the big reason for that, well, there's kind of two things. One is what happens is when people high roll in a normal game, it's like it's possible to come back from that. Like high rolling in a normal game means, people are, I don't know, maybe they get a 4 cost unit on level 5 or something, or they get an augment that really matches them. But when you have a high roll game in like a game where there's disgusting amounts of loot coming out, the gap between people that are hitting and people who are not hitting, it just goes through the roof, and it makes it harder for people to come back because like the difference between, like, let's say you get one of the encounters that gives everybody a radiant item, right? If somebody gets a radiant item that perfectly fits their carry, like the benefit of that is so much higher than in a game where that is not an option. The gap between people who are hitting and people who are not hitting just like opens up enormously in these high econ, high loot games. So that's the biggest first issue with this, is it makes it harder to come back because you can just have a lot of the time these games where it's like, oh, well, they high rolled in a high loot game. Like, there's nothing I can do. I can't possibly come back from that because what they're getting is just so perfectly tailored to their board. I have no chance. So the gap between people who hit and people who don't hit explodes in these games. And that's kind of the first thing. The other problem is in high econ games, it actually narrows the range of possibilities of what you can play. So like in a low econ game where, people are like, people are struggling to make it to level 8, like maybe like 1 or 2 people makes it to level 9. The number of comps that are playable is relatively high. People can kind of play a lot of different things. Like you can play 1 cost reroll games, you can try to play a board made up of 3 cost units and maybe try to 3-star them by the end of the game. But like in a game where there's disgusting amounts of loot and like everyone in the lobby makes it to level 9 or even to level 10, the range of potential things you can play narrows significantly because a lot of the like reroll comps just cannot be played because they'll just get outscaled. If everybody is running boards that are like full of 2-star 5 costs, the options that you can play just go down very, very narrowly. So what you had in this set was, because there was so much loot and it was so easy to get to level 9 in these games, is the range of playable team comps got very small, and particularly at the more competitive parts of the ladder, you could have these games where like maybe only like 2 or at most 3 comps are even playable, and the game would just become whoever can hit those comps first just wins the lobby, and it really did not feel good because there just weren't a lot of options available for people to play. So that was a real issue, and that's a big reason why I'm not a fan of these super high econ games. Again, it's fine from time to time. I don't mind having like a prismatic augment every now and then, but like I don't want triple prismatic loot raining from the sky portal games all the time, because it gets really tedious. And as I said, it narrows what you can actually play, because it just, a lot of things are not playable under that scenario because they just get outscaled. So that was another huge problem, and I do think it was a major reason why the set got boring so fast for a lot of players, because there just wasn't a lot of option on what could be played. Now, throw in the additional problem with that is you had lackluster trait design in this set that really wasn't that interesting. I mean, I said that you had the nice advantage of having the Exalted trait, which was a nice trait to have in this set, but a lot of the others were just kind of boring. We didn't really have a lot of interesting stuff in this set, I will say. I mean, there's some stuff that was okay, like I don't mind Porcelain trait that I'm playing there. I think that was pretty decent, but like Arcanist trait was a pretty boring spellcasting trait. It was not as interesting as some of the traits we've seen in the past there. Like the Kale Storyweaver trait, this is one of the least interesting of the puts an additional unit on the board trait that we've ever seen. Like, compare this to, I don't know, something like getting the Galio who crashed in set 5, the set 4, the Cultist Galio, or the Innovator that would turn into like first into a Annie's Tibbers, then into a dragon in set 6, or like even the mech back in set 3. Like, this was a pretty lame one. Kale was not a very interesting unit in any way, so I do think that was another issue as well. And then we also had a whole bunch of traits that provided team-wide benefits that I really did not think were especially great in this set. Like, so for example, it actually was pretty confusing just how many traits had team-wide benefits. So like, if you're looking at the list, even what I'm running right now, so like Sage, that's a team-wide benefit. It gives Omnivamp in the front row and AP in the back rows. Arcanist, that's a team-wide trait. Dragonlord, that's a team-wide trait. Gives, attack speed after the lightning strikes down. Heavenly trait, that's another team-wide trait. Everybody gets team-wide benefits. Invoker, that's another team-wide trait. You had like 6 different traits that gave a team-wide benefit. So this was honestly too many, and usually I like having some of these traits because, you can splash them in and be flexible with your team. It's nice to have some traits that you can kind of flex in and splash for a team-wide benefit, but there were too many of them in this set, and the problem was it made it very difficult to evaluate board strength. Like, it was hard to know if your board was stronger or weaker than a lot of these others, because it would be like, I thought I was gonna win that round. It's like, oh, I guess they had Sage 3, Dragonlord 2, Altruist 3. I was like, oh, I guess they had all those team-wide benefits, but like, it was hard to evaluate board strength with this, and it was pretty confusing. It's like, is it better for me to put in a Heavenly unit to get the Heavenly unit, or do I like want another rank of Sage? Like, I mean, I guess for people who played the set a ton, they could kind of figure out this stuff over time, but I found it to be pretty confusing overall. So I was not a big fan of having this many team-wide traits. The developers also pointed out when they did their own retrospective, which they put up on the Riot website, they also pointed out that it was very confusing because the main carry in some of these comps didn't have the trait that they were that was part of the vertical trait you were playing. A good example of this was Ghostly trait, right? If you go vertical Ghostly, you would think that Kayn and Morgana are the main carries because they're the 4-cost Ghostly units, but no, that's actually not true. Senna was the main carry in a Ghostly composition, even though she was not a Ghostly unit. Or Heavenly trait. Heavenly was another big vertical trait, but most of the carries you would play with Heavenly trait were not Heavenly units. You would typically play either Kayn or Yone if you're going to reroll for Yone, and he was pretty busted in a lot of these patches. So like, yeah, the main carry on a Heavenly board is like Yone, who does not have Heavenly trait. This is very counterintuitive. Again, if you play the set a lot, eventually you'd figure this out, but you really don't want to design traits this way that are just like confusing and don't make sense for the people that are playing them. So yeah, that was a problem. They also pointed out that some of these units had kind of like weird design, like Yasuo. He's a swordsman. He's typically played as like a melee carry, but no, he's a tank in this set. Yeah, Yasuo's a tank. It's like, what? That's very confusing. So just kind of some weird trait design that didn't really make a lot of sense, and I do think that hurt the set. Another thing that I think hurt the set as well, there really wasn't a good econ trait in this set. And that was probably a good thing in some ways because you didn't have even more loot. I said that the big problem in the set that there was too much loot anyway. But the economic trait in this set was Fortune, and it was a very poorly designed trait. It's really a shame because we had Heartsteel in the previous set, which is one of the best economic traits they've ever designed. Probably a little overtuned, a little overpowered, but still the design was really cool. The problem with Heartsteel was it was seen as being a little bit too reliable, and because it cashed out every 4 rounds, it didn't really provide like those giga high cash out moments, which apparently meant that set 10 was not as popular in certain areas, particularly in China, which is where the bulk of TFT's population is. Apparently set 10 was hurt by the fact that they didn't have like some crazy gambling cash out trait. So instead they tried to do that in this set with Fortune trait. And Fortune was just such a badly designed trait. It was very confusing in terms of playing it. You like rolled the dice, and then after a certain amount of rounds, you would get a cash out from the trait. Like that's inherently kind of confusing to start with. And then in addition to that, it was also a trait that could only be played as a loss streaking trait. Like there was no way to put in Fortune and just like get a little additional econ. If you were win streaking, you got literally no benefit from Fortune trait whatsoever. You had to get it in on 2-1, and then you had to go on a big loss streak. It was literally the only way to play the trait. So as a result, because this trait was like so wonky and it was hard to use, it turned out that it was barely played at all in this set. I mean, I think it was played at like the very top of the ladder. You had people playing it. But when they did that, inevitably it was because they were trying to get a cash out with, they were trying to get like one big cash out, and then they would move out of Fortune trait, and then they would move into Kaisa and Bruisers. And that was like literally the only way you could play the trait is get it in on 2-1, lose like 8 to 10 rounds in a row, and then move into Kaisa. And like that was the only way the trait could be played. That is really poor design. So this set definitely was hurt by not having a trait like what's the word I'm looking for? Like Heartsteel or like Underground trait from back in set 8. I mean, they should literally just bring back Underground trait. It's the best econ trait they've ever done. It's between that and Heartsteel, but I think Underground was probably a better trait in terms of how it was designed. So they should, the set was definitely hurt by having that, because that's a really useful component of a set, is to have like that one econ trait that, granted, doesn't give any combat benefit, but does give you a scaling econ benefit. And that just basically didn't exist in this set because Fortune was such a terribly designed trait. So we just really didn't get the benefit of that at all. By the way, I finally get the champion send back, and I can send this 2-star Lilia over to ASM, and that's going to really help his board out, as I finally also hit 2-star Diana up there that I've been looking for forever. So that was another real problem. As I said, just the general lackluster trait design. And then I do have to mention this as well. The balance in this set was terrible. It was a really, really rough set in terms of balance. It got better at the very end of the set, but oof, this was a rough set in terms of balance, which is made all the worse after we had a really well-balanced set in the form of set 10. So when the set came out, it was really unbalanced in favor of rerolling. Like you can go back and look at some of the videos I did. It was like literally every single game was a reroll game, because the 4 costs were so weak that they were like not even remotely playable. You just couldn't play the 4 cost. You had to reroll something, and it was mostly rerolling for 3 costs. With the way that TFT's economy works too, is once anybody starts rerolling, it gets easier for everybody else to reroll. So everybody was going for Yone, and then that unlocked like all the other 3 costs over and over and over again. So it was really a mess. And then after that, they realized that everything was reroll. So they're like, oh, we need to buff the 4 cost. So then they like massively buffed every single 4 cost unit across the board, which had the net effect of every reroll comp then died, and everything was based on 4 costs. So then the game turned into everybody rushes level 8, and then everybody rolls down, and it's just whatever 4 costs you hit. And then if you hit your 4 costs, then you top 4, and if you don't hit your 4 costs, then you're going bot 4, and you're probably getting like a 7th or an 8th. Like, again, this gameplay is not interesting. TFT needs to have a variety of different cost structures. You need some people going for, 1 cost reroll. You want some people focusing on 2 and 3 cost units. And then you want some people that are like trying to rush level 9. But the balance was just so awful in this patch that you really didn't get that. And people were just all over the place over and over again. By the way, I make a mistake here in keeping the Janna on this board. I needed to sell that Janna and play the Rakan here, because that is an infinitely better Dragon Lord unit. One of the bigger mistakes I made in this game was keeping Janna on here. Needed to move into that unit. But anyway, like I said, so it was just a rough, and I mean a rough set in terms of balance. There were times where they were like screwing around with like very basic aspects of the game. They changed the base health of every 4 cost around. They changed the shop odds, like the level 6, the level 7, the level 8, the level 9, the percentages that you hit them. They changed them like 2 or 3 different times. Like they were literally just taking anything and throwing it at the wall. They trying to get anything to stick and just seeing like what would actually stick there. So it was pretty rough. And as I said, eventually they kind of worked out the balance. The balance here at the end of the set is actually not that bad, but like it took them so long to get there that they really burned a lot of trust that people had in this set. And the net effect of all that was this set turned into a ghost town. Like this was not a popular set. And, they've actually, by the way, the other team makes 3-star Galio here. So we're just going to have to try to beat the other player because we're probably not beating 3-star Galio. They actually only have one item but on that Galio. But anyway, yeah, 3-star Galio, that's pretty rough. But anyway, this was clearly not a popular set, at least not in North America and Europe. I don't know what was going on in China. Like, the developers said that they were super happy with this set, and okay, maybe some of the metrics were great in terms of like what was going on in other parts of the world, but like all the data tells us this was not a successful set in North America at all. The ranked player base was down by a lot, by about 20 to 30%, like 20 to 30% lower. By the way, look at this shield that Galio 3 puts on these units. It's insane. But like the ranked player base was down like 20 to 30%. The Twitch stats, I keep track of them just to see. Twitch stats are a good indicator of popularity. They were way, and I mean way down in this set. The posts on TFT Reddit were like, honestly, TFT Reddit was a freaking ghost town in this set. By the way, I lose to the 3-star Galio, but ASM fortunately wins, so we're going to take the first place. And that's a sign to start wrapping up this video. But anyway, as I said, so this was not a popular set. People abandoned it pretty quickly, and I think the reasons why were pretty obvious. It didn't have a lot of replayability. There wasn't a lot of flexibility from unit to unit. The balance was bad. The encounters were way too random. And it just felt like you didn't really have a lot of control over what happened in a lot of these games. You could just win or lose for things that you had no control over whatsoever. So I hope that they learned from this set, which was, again, very clearly a placeholder set just meant to buy time until they get to other sets they care more about. I hope they take some lessons from this and don't try to do anything as random as what they did in this set. Because this set, I mean, there was some fun to it, but overall this one really didn't work. Anyway, regardless, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Let's hope for a better set next time. Until then, take care, folks, and I'll see you again soon.